As you probably know, our motto reads, "This time is different." And why is it so? The context is different because the crisis of the economy and the crisis of confidence and trust of people towards institutions and the politicians in general makes a difference. This time is different also because the Lisbon Treaty is now in force and the fully fledged powers of the European Parliament are now tangible. And this time is different because this time the job is not anymore to make people talk about Europe. I suppose that this is already happening, but instead the job is to make them talk about Europe in an objective manner, given the facts. And this is where it stands the real challenge ahead of the May 2014 elections. Our institutional communication campaign aims to inform citizens about the real stakes in the upcoming European elections. They will be deciding, of course, what happens or doesn't happen in Europe, what should happen, what should not happen in Europe. The EU, allow me to underline, is and has to be a political project, not a faceless bureaucracy. And we need to convey that message to citizens. As you know, we will be seeing very new elements come election time. With regards to European political families, people will be able this time to see and hear from actual candidates for the next European Commission President, and we will be hearing about political programs for the EU during the European elections. For all these reasons, and I conclude, Karen, our campaign tries to be in touch with the real issues affecting people, affecting everyday life of European citizens. We need to, and we want to, really show the relevance of the Union in their everyday lives, and we also want to show that there is, because this is reality, scope for change and for improvement. In short, we have to convince them that their voice counts in the Union and that they can decide for the cause of Europe in the upcoming years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Annie. And just to let you know, we will, of course, be having a debate, as you see on your agenda, a little bit later. So if there are any questions that you want to ask, maybe just take a note of them now. Some of our speakers are making points that are relevant for you, and then we will get to your questions during the next part, during the debate. So next we're going to hear from Mercedes Bresso, the first Vice President of the Committee of the Regions.
Merci. Je vais parler en français. Donc, si vous avez besoin d'écouteurs, faites-le. Merci de votre présence. Je suis très heureuse de vous accueillir à cette 4e édition d'EuroPCom. Je vous accueille ici au nom du comité des régions, comme ça a été dit, qui est l'organisateur de cette conférence annuelle sur la communication publique. Comme les années précédentes, le Parlement européen nous fait l'honneur d'héberger notre séance d'ouverture et je remercie en particulier la présidente Mme Podimata pour son soutien continu. Chaque année, nous nous retrouvons ici à Bruxelles. Nous l'apprécions beaucoup. Cette année, notre coopération dans le cadre d'EuroPCom est d'autant plus symbolique qu'elle s'inscrit, comme ça a été rappelé, dans le vif des débats des 2 prochains jours. Comment pouvons-nous amener les élections européennes de 2014 au niveau local, régional et national? Mais évidemment, surtout au niveau local et régional, c'est là que les gens vont matériellement voter. J'ai suivi avec intérêt le lancement de la campagne en vue des élections européennes et les premières mesures prises par les partis politiques européens pour sensibiliser l'opinion publique aux élections de l'année prochaine. Et en tant qu'Européenne convaincue, je partage votre ambition. Mais en tant que responsable politique régional, je me permettrai de vous donner un conseil. Ayez des attentes modestes et réalistes. Une enquête menée par le comité des régions et l'université de Louvain parmi les responsables locaux et régionaux de la communication qui sera d'ailleurs présenté au cours de l'un des ateliers de cet après-midi, indique clairement que les élections ne sont pas, ou pas encore, c'est à nous de changer la donne, une priorité en dehors de la bulle bruxelloise. Le discours sur l'Union européenne ne suscite l'intérêt du public que s'il est question de projets tangibles, concrets, les résultats visibles par exemple du financement de l'Union européenne dans la vie quotidienne des citoyens. Donc il faut veiller à que le récit sur l'Europe ait une dimension sociale plus marquée. L'Eurobaromètre standard de l'été dernier indique que le chômage est de plus en plus largement en tête des préoccupations des Européens. Aussi longtemps que la presse et la télévision consacreront 90% des informations sur l'Union européenne, au plan de sauvetage, à la surveillance budgétaire, le TOPEC, à la gouvernance économique, le CIPEC et à d'autres thèmes similaires, bien qu'étant une économiste, je ne sous-estime pas du tout l'importance de ces mesures économiques. Mais nous n'arriverons pas à toucher le cœur et l'esprit des citoyens européens. Je suis convaincue que les nombreux spécialistes de la communication locale et régionale qui se trouvent dans cette salle partageront cette conclusion, étant donné qu'ils sont confrontés quotidiennement aux besoins et aux attentes de nos citoyens. Et j'en ai eu encore ce matin, avant d'arriver ici, j'avais 40 femmes représentantes des syndicats italiens et en particulier de la section qui s'occupe des retraités, et les questions, les demandes qu'elles posent en Europe sont toutes par rapport à la dimension sociale de l'Europe qui est perçue comme un peu absente. Et en tout cas, même pour les choses que l'Europe fait, n'est pas perçue comme quelque chose provenant de l'Europe. Et donc, parfois, elle est oubliée, le Fonds social européen, par exemple. Donc, comme comité des régions, qui est un peu le lien entre les institutions européennes qui se trouvent par définition loin des territoires et les guichets concrets des services publics locaux, nous sommes résolus à contribuer à ce nouveau récit pour l'Europe, à soutenir tous les efforts de communication qui pourront aboutir à faire davantage participer nos citoyens à la politique de l'Union européenne. Et encore merci pour votre présence. Chaque année, nous sommes vraiment très heureux de voir combien de représentants de la presse et du système de communication local viennent ici à Bruxelles à discuter avec nous. Merci.
Lithuanian Minister. Oh, we're still. My God, this really is. Okay. We're next going to hear from Vytautas Leškevičius, who is the Lithuanian Minister for European Affairs.
Thanks, and good morning to everybody. But first, my thanks go to the European Parliament, to the Committee of Regions, to the Committee of Economic and Social Affairs for arranging this. Because the title of the event we have this morning, and the time couldn't be better as we approach the European election next year. Plus, we have European Years of Citizens this year, which, by the way, European Presidency of the Council of the EU is paying a lot of attention. But now, as I can see, we have here a kind of brainstorming session, so I just want to bounce on a couple of insights that I gathered while running the EU Council Presidency. First, the debate on the coming European elections are dominated by one question: will anti-European forces gain a foothold in the European political arena or the European political landscape? And it is last week that took part in the European Parliament plenary session on on the rise of political extremism, and it seems that radical movements have indeed become stronger. They grow stronger and could pose a threat to European values. Well, this means that the composition of the next European Parliament will reflect the real political landscape of our continent is going to have next year. But still, I do believe that there still are several things we can do to make this picture more moderate. First, communicators should actively engage for European movements and the member states. They must speak out, help citizens understand what Europe is for and what it is against. And I think there should be plenty of pro-arguments in the British debate, in the British wide-in debate. Secondly, we have European political parties in place, and this is where true political potential lies. With good coordination among EU and national level parties, we have the possibility of through pan-European campaigning. That is how we could multiply the outreach of communication done by the European Parliament. And as it is strong force, we must challenge anti-European views. Just in the words of Edmund, all that takes for evil to flourish is for good men to do nothing. Thirdly, communicators in the member states have the best feel of the situation on the ground. Therefore, they should act within the framework of their own constitutional arrangement and, where concerned activities of student group, their own national legislation. And finally, we must get our act together to emerge stronger and more prosperous from the economic crisis. Because unemployment can help foster extremist anti-European views, and our mission is to root out the problem swiftly. Act, react, impact. This is a slogan for the next European elections, and I think it should apply perfectly to European communicators, because the fight for the minds and sounds of Europeans next year isn't going to be easy. And last but not least, possibly even more important, what we have to do, what we have to show is actually that we are serving every European citizen. It's not about picking who is going to become who after the election. It's not about institutional wars where we have time and again. No, it's about how can we serve better the cause of and for every European citizen of a better market. Here, I'm looking forward to a very stimulating debate. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. So now I'd like to call on Jane Morrice, the Vice President of the European Economic and Social Committee, to speak with us. Jane.
Thank you very much indeed, Karen, and thank you very much for the invitation here this morning to be joint part of this debate. I've only got 3 minutes, so I'm going to speak fast. I want to start with a very simple premise. European citizens, and I think you'll all agree, aren't stupid. We are well educated, and most of us have a very good understanding of the basic principles that underpin democracy. One man or woman, one vote, universal suffrage, elections, the ballot box, and all the rest. So why do 1 and 2 of us, 50% of European Union population, and that, according to my calculations, is a couple of 100 million people, decide to sit at home, stay at work, or walk the dog on election day, particularly European elections? What's the problem? Because it's only when we know what lies behind this serious election malaise that we're going to find a way to do something about it. Well, I say that there's a multitude of problems, but I refine them to 3 to make it simple. And you, the experts, will probably agree or disagree. I'm putting it into those with a lack of information, those with a lack of trust, those with a lack of incentive. And I'll call them the don't know, don't want to know, and don't care brigade. As far as the don't knows are concerned, they should be given the information they need, and it's been said in this platform, to make an informed choice. They need facts that are relevant to their daily lives, their surroundings and their circumstances. They need to know, and especially in the UK, that Brussels isn't all about bureaucracy and bendy bananas. It's about much more. It's about cleaner rivers and seas, it's about safer products, it's about equal rights, it's about protecting people, and it's about promoting peace. They also need to know what's in it for them. Whatever their profession, their creed or their culture. And the people who need to know most right now are the young Greeks, Spanish, Irish, unemployed, who need to know where they're going to get their next job and what we're doing about it. The don't want to knows are the other breed. They're the ones that I call the ones who don't trust the system, whatever the system is, and I don't think they would go, they believe that the elite in their ivory towers are foreign, faceless, and too far away is the description. They need to see the human side of Brussels. They need to see the people who knock their door every day, coming back in their villages and their towns and their cities and working for them in Brussels. We, for example, in the EESC are stepping up the going local approach that the Parliament does as well, so that organised civil society back home knows that we're speaking on their behalf. The last category is the most serious, I believe. They're the ones who don't vote because they don't care. And that's the one that I call the bitterly apathetic. They're the ones who say, well, I won't vote because it won't make a difference, and what does it matter anyway, and etc. They're the ones that are possibly the most difficult to convince. It's a tough call. So what do we do about it? Apart from compulsory voting, which I don't think would wash with many people around here, why not pick the best practice examples? Like Malta, for example. Apparently they've got 90% turnout every time. And also start focusing on those groups that don't tend to vote. And of course we're talking young people and women. So those are two areas that we could definitely focus on more. All that I've said here, it's a drop in the ocean. But, and I'd like to close by saying, if Rome wasn't built in a day, the European Union is still not finished, and that's after almost 3/4 of a century. So we've got to be waiting. Thank you very much indeed.
And finally, before we get to the next stage of our session this morning, we'll hear now from Jean-Pierre van der Steen, the Deputy Director General of DG Communication with the European Commission.
Merci Karen. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, bonjour aussi aux collègues. Je vais d'emblée rassurer Jane Morrice, j'ai un chien et j'ai la beauté. La question que se posent les citoyens européens à la veille des élections est très simple. Pourquoi aller voter? Et à cette question simple, il faut une réponse simple. Ce qui se décide ici, au Parlement européen, affecte au quotidien tous les citoyens de l'Union. Et ce qui se décide ici, au Parlement européen, est le fruit d'un débat démocratique. Et qui dit débat, dit aussi participation. Et qui dit participation, dit voter. Je voudrais vous donner 3 arguments pour amener les citoyens et les électeurs européens au vote des élections européennes. Le premier est le suivant. En 2009, quand au retour de vacances, vous ouvriez votre facture de téléphonie mobile, il y a beaucoup de chances que vous ayez un choc. Car le poids du roaming dans cette facture, des coûts d'itinérance, comme on dit en bon français, était extrêmement élevé. Aujourd'hui, il est réduit de 90%, 90%. En 2014, il sera probablement proche de 0 grâce à une proposition de la Commission. Deuxième élément, particulièrement concret. Bientôt, ce sera la Saint-Nicolas, ce sera Noël. Et les citoyens européens qui sont aussi des parents seront extrêmement rassurés de pouvoir acheter et offrir à leurs enfants des jouets qui répondent à des normes de sécurité. Ça aussi, ça se décide au Parlement européen et ça touche les citoyens dans leur vie de tous les jours. Troisième et dernier argument, la crise de la dette. J'ai pu lire aujourd'hui dans la presse financière qu'en Irlande, qu'en Espagne, qu'au Portugal, l'année prochaine, ces gouvernements pourront se refinancer sur les marchés internationaux. Ceci aussi, c'est grâce à ce qui s'est décidé ici, au Parlement européen. La Grèce a repris le chemin laborieux, mais réel, de la croissance. Ça aussi, c'est une conséquence des décisions qui sont prises ici. C'est la raison pour laquelle la Commission a décidé d'être aux côtés du Parlement et des autres institutions dans cette campagne, raison pour laquelle nous avons organisé à travers l'Europe plus de 30 dialogues citoyens. Hier, la vice-présidente Reding était à Stockholm, demain le président Barroso sera à Liège et après-demain, le commissaire Piebalgs sera à Riga. Ceux-ci sont des éléments concrets, importants, qui doivent motiver les citoyens à y voter. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle, dans cette campagne, la Commission sera aux côtés du Parlement et des autres institutions. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. And again, some points that have been made by our speakers, you may wish to take a note of them, and we will use them for the debate following Matthew McGregor, who is our next speaker now, going to make the keynote speech for this morning's session. And Matthew is the Director of Rapid Response on President Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. Matthew.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me here today to share some of my experiences with you. I'm going to try and be upbeat. I'm battling against jet lag and a few days of head cold and my natural reluctance as someone who's British, so bear with me. I apologise in advance. I'm in the enviable position, I suppose, of being British. The country I'm from is a member of the European Union, and I've also worked on an American presidential election campaign. So I'm grateful for the chance to share that experience with you. The topic today is the European elections and how to use public communications to engage people in those elections. You're worried about the continuing decline in trust people place in this institution and others in this city, and in the continuing decline in turnout in these elections. To understand my insights, maybe it's useful to share a little bit about me. I worked for 14 months on the digital rapid response team at the Obama campaign, based in Chicago, working for the director of digital, Teddy Goff, and working with people across departments in the organisation. My focus and those of my colleagues in the response world was this guy, Mitt Romney, for those of you who might have forgotten who he is. I worked with people in our media team, research, policy, and of course digital, to respond to attacks the Romney campaign made on the president, and to try and make sure that voters had the facts about Romney's record and what he would do if he was elected as the president. I spent every waking hour thinking about Romney and what he said and his positions and what he had for breakfast, and he was a big part of my life for more than a year, and now he's gone. And it's a strange. I tweet him sometimes, he never replies. Before I worked on the Obama campaign, I worked at a company called Blue State Digital, and I'm now back working with them in the US. In many ways, some of the things that we did on the campaign are the things that we did and do at Blue State Digital. So although my talk is very political, I think it's worth mentioning that because the same strategies that we applied on the campaign are approaches that we apply with a range of the clients that we have. So this isn't really necessarily a political campaign thing or a political thing per se. I think it's just worth bearing that in mind. So you have a big topic to say the least, and I've got 20 minutes to cover as much as I can. I'm not going to pretend that I will be comprehensive, so I'm going to try and outline 4 things I think that you can learn from the Obama campaign. Some of those I picked up from watching my senior colleagues. I was lucky enough to work with some incredible people on the campaign and learn a lot from them. And I'm also going to speak specifically about some of the experiences that I had directly. So the first point, I think it's worth going back to remind ourselves where things stood in 2011. The American economy was in an incredibly bad way. Unemployment was stubbornly high. The president's approval rating was at a record low. The number of people who thought that the country was going in the right direction far outweighed the number of people who thought it was going in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? Nate Silver, who is famously the predictor of the final election result and a source of great relief for those of us in the campaign in the final stretch. In 2011, he said that circumstances were such that the election wouldn't be won by Barack Obama. So the situation was very stark. Elections are about a choice between competing visions for who will win and use power. The challenge for the president and for our campaign was to set out what those competing visions were. To the president, 2012 represented a make or break moment for the middle class, what in Europe we would call the working class or lower middle class. I know confusing terminology, but middle class in American politics. This is a moment where there was a clear choice between a president who would fight for the middle class, for jobs, investment, education on one hand, and on the other hand, a candidate who represented going back to the trickle-down economics of the 80s that rewarded the rich with tax cuts and hoped for the best that they would spend the money in ways that would trickle down to those in the middle class and the working class. The president set out that framework in keynote speeches and other occasions, and the campaign created a drumbeat of content that went through every single day of the election campaign. We laid out clear dividing lines between the two choices on offer through digital content, through our spokespeople on television, through the statements of the president. You know, these are clear dividing lines between two choices that people had. This wasn't about institutions, about a vague sense of togetherness or a distant project. In everything we did, we aimed to set out a political, almost ideological choice. The reality is it's not for voters to decide, to work out for themselves, to pick apart for themselves the careful nuance and intricacies of positions, and to understand how support for a grand project translates to their own daily lives. It's for campaigns to set out clearly and unambiguously what the choices are. This is another example of exactly how we did that on the issue of women's rights. The second point I want to make is about communities. Campaigns are about people, what we will do for people when we're in power. And because it is about people and what we'll do for them in power, we should involve them in the campaigns. Whether that's the campaign's supporters, members typically in Europe, or whether it's voters out of the country, we have to think about how we're involving people in the campaigns day by day. There are two particular things I want to draw out from this point. The first one is about how the campaign in 2012 worked with our supporters. In many ways, both Obama campaigns in 2008 and 2012 were the most traditional campaigns in decades. People speaking to people in their neighborhoods. The Obama campaign knocked on millions of doors, called Millions of Voters, registered hundreds of thousands of people to be registered to vote in the first place. We opened hundreds of local offices. Our goal was to recruit new people to join our campaign, and as much as we wanted them to do stuff for us, we also wanted to include people in what we did. Sometimes that meant sending out campaign briefings from people like Jeremy Bird, explaining the latest goings on inside the campaign. Sometimes it meant getting local organisers on conference calls with senior staff. One of our efforts online was to tell the story of the movement itself across the country. This photo on the screen at the moment is from an office opening in Virginia. The people in this photo aren't staff. They're not paid to be there. They are volunteers who showed up in their own local neighbourhood to take part. They were the campaign to us, and we were there to serve them. But we wanted to reflect back to people across the country what was going on, so that they understood the role in their movement. These people in this office saw every day the work of people in other offices around the country, online and in the materials we put out online and offline. There's no app for building relationships, but we use digital to keep people's spirits up and show them the movement that they were part of. And that's particularly important for people across the country. It's also important for staff in headquarters. I know that people like these kept our spirits up at low moments. It was a one-year anniversary of the first debate last week, and lots of us thought back to how low a moment that was for us in the campaign office. There's nothing like feeling you're going to lose a presidential election. But look, telling stories isn't just about the campaign supporters. It's also about motivating people out in the country. People's real stories cut through and speak about the issues in a way that politicians can't. This photo was originally just shared online by a user on Tumblr, talking about the reasons why he or she was going to support the president in the ballot box. We don't know who originally made this, but we shared it because it told a much better story than any of our surrogates or politicians ever could. You know, people's real, authentically told stories come through. They say something about the issues that people face in elections better than we could. I'm going to show you just the start. I know time is tight, so I'm just going to show you the start of one of the videos, one of the many, many videos we used during the campaign to do exactly that. I'm not going to show the entire thing because time is tight, but I'll tweet each of these videos that I'm showing afterwards Yet another good reason to follow me on Twitter. I tweet a lot about soccer as well, so I'm sure that's another plus. But look, Ian's story is much more powerful than any speech that the President could give. It's much more powerful than any of the statistics that there are about the people who came home and the other benefits of ending the Iraq War. Stories cut through. The third point, this next one is some of it is about technology. So if you're going to switch off a couple of moments during my remarks, now is the moment to do it. This is the boring bit. But I think this is important because, you know, as obvious as make it easy sounds, if you go to most of the websites of political campaigns or institutions, the barriers that are in place for people engaging with what we do and taking action are really huge. And we had those barriers as well. And we tried to use technology to remove those barriers and make it easy for people to take part in what we wanted them to take part in. Here's one example. We had a problem that of the people that we needed to vote for the President, aged 18 to 30. We had no way of contacting 50% of those people. We had no email address, no postal address, no phone number, no way to get in touch with those people and communicate directly why they should vote for the President. We had incredibly smart people, or lucky enough to have incredibly smart people working for the campaign, and they produced this system, which we called Targeted Share, that allowed people who had logged in and shared their data with us for us to know which of their friends weren't registered to vote. So we could set things up very easily for them. Everything they needed to know, which of their friends weren't registered, what information their friends needed to be able to get registered, and then to put that right in front of them in the way that the example on the screen shows. It's easy for people to take action in a very direct and tangible way. I'm probably guessing that there are some data privacy concerns in the room. There often are more in Europe than in America when we talk about these things. So culturally, this example might work, not work everywhere, but you get my point that making it easy for people is a really, really crucial thing to do. But making it technologically easy for people is important. It's not the only way in which you can make it easy for people. There's also the point about making it emotionally easy for people. You know, lots of people agree with political campaigns. They vote and they might speak to their friends about political issues, but they don't necessarily then go that next step of taking part in the political campaigns that we work on, sharing the speeches that our politicians give in Parliament, or talking about the campaigns that we want them to talk about. We tried to think about the content that we were producing from a user's point of view. You know, if I didn't work for the Obama campaign, would I share this piece of content? Would I put it in front of my friends, knowing that it will reflect on me and reflect what people think of me? You know, I always try and think of content from the point of view of my sister. She's very political. She cares about political issues. She takes part in political campaigns through her church. But she's not political in the way that lots of us are. And she's the first person to give me hassle if she thinks I'm being boring on Facebook. So making it easy for people to share something on your behalf is about how high quality it is, how interesting it is, how engaging it is. I want to show you one example, another video. I'm sorry, I'm behind on the slides. I want to show you one quick video. It's about tax policy. It's about the intricacies of Massachusetts tax policy and the intricacies of Mitt Romney's policy and record on tax policy. And I think you know, you'll think it's pretty boring from that introduction, but let's take a look.
As governor, I cut taxes 19 times and didn't raise taxes. You call them fees, I'm sure the people that had to pay it, whether they call them bananas, who still had to pay extra.
The strange thing is, when I was growing up, one of my ambitions was to work on a presidential campaign and put out a video with can-can music in it. So that was something ticked off my list. But seriously, you know, it's anything but boring. It's about tax policy and Mitt Romney's record on taxes, but it's not boring and it's easy to share. And there's also an interesting point about rapid response in that video. If that comes up in the discussion, I'll talk about that then. One thing I just want to quickly touch on is about data. You know, there's a lot of talk about data after the presidential campaign. And I just want to say one quick thing, and maybe this will come up in the discussion. Data only helps you to run an effective campaign. It can help you to run an effective campaign, but it's not a silver bullet. The more you're able to understand your audience and how they want you to communicate with them, engage with them, the better it is for everyone. But you still need an effective campaign to be able to make the most of that data and to effectively communicate with people who engage with them. So I think, you know, data comes with a health warning in some respects. So my last point before I wrap up, and it comes with an apology to the translators, because I think this is a difficult one to communicate across different cultures. You know, don't be lame in America, don't be daggy if you're Australian. I think the Swedish word "honta" can sometimes apply. Don't be that guy. You know, in many ways, what we're saying is we're asking people to get it, to use the online space in a way that chimes with the norms and values of the online space. You know, politicians aren't always great at getting it, and I say that with the greatest of respect. Some of my best friends are politicians, but this is one that I think is really important before we dive in. Just because you can do something online doesn't mean it's a good idea for you to do that thing online. So I've got one last very, very quick video. I don't like to rail on Mitt Romney in many respects. I think he's a great guy, but this is too great an example to not show.
Yeah. These are pancakes. In Rosemont, Illinois. I just got these pancakes from a restaurant called Pancakes, Eggs, Etc. That's kind of a play on words. Pancakes. Apparently they're very good. And a nice crowd there. Just brought some friends this morning, so brought them down to Puerto Rico.
I do miss it. You know, the strange thing is, Romney actually never eats the pancakes in that video. There was a fierce debate in our office about whether he had the pancakes on his lap just for show, or whether he actually ate them or not. But helpfully he did explain that it was a play on words, the etc. You know, maybe that's a little unfair, picking on Romney, but you know, there are so many examples of, you know, almost hostage-style videos like this one out there. Just because you can do something online doesn't mean you should. And, you know, the tone of voice you use, the humility, the willingness to be self-depreciating, the general openness to the cultures and norms of the platform you're using, these are things that really matter. These are genuine hurdles that you need to get over. When Clint Eastwood talked to an empty chair as if it contained the president at the Republican convention, the temptation for us was to say nothing. The risk was for us to go too far and upset one of the most popular actors in American history. We tweeted this instead, and I think got the tone right. Being self-knowing isn't easy in situations like this, but you've got to get it right, and when you do, the rewards are high. Some of this comes from authenticity. Unfortunately, that's a word that's becoming, you know, one of those slightly BSPR speak words. But authenticity does help you cut through and be normal. I've got one example here. This is a fundraising email that we sent out asking people for money, and it's actually we forwarded an email that someone had sent us. An email from people saying that they'd given money to the campaign, even though they couldn't afford it, even though it meant they were going without their regular family Pizza Friday. The email was sent by Jeremy Bird, our National Field Director, humbly and with gratitude. And I think that that's a mark of a campaign that understands how to get this online presence right. It's not easy to do. It takes a lot of effort from senior staff and the political leadership. It takes investment in the people who do get it, hiring the right people, backing those people, giving them more leeway than politicians would usually like to give, and putting yourself often outside the comfort zone. But it pays dividends. So to finish, hopefully not too far over time, I want to say that Europe has a lot to learn from the US and the American elections last year. There's 1,000 examples of specific tactics, such as aggressive fundraising, or activities like house parties, or technology barriers like data privacy, that you could use to say that Europe can't learn the lessons of America. That's easy to do, but I hope you'll look at the bigger picture and the principles that underpinned the campaign's thinking in 2012. There are many there, 4 of which I hope I've outlined today, and more which will come out in the discussion we'll have over the next hour. Thank you very much.
Some really interesting points there from Matthew's address. It'll be very interesting to see how much of that will actually be of relevance for European Parliament, European elections next year. And again, you will have your opportunity to put some of those questions to Matthew and to the rest of our panellists in just a moment. Before that, though, you're probably aware now the European Parliament recently launched its Election Campaign 2014 video, and we are just going to see that. Anni Podimata will again introduce the video, and don't forget to put your headsets on in order to hear the video.
Thank you, Karen. I also would like to thank Matthew, and allow me to say that despite our more modest, at least financial tools, I'm quite proud for our video campaign that you're going to watch in a couple of minutes. Despite the differences in comparison with the video that we've seen from Matthew, there are some similarities. For example, I've seen that in his presentation, Matthew focused very much in the slogan saying, citizens or people aren't just consumers, they want to act. And actually this is the baseline of our institutional campaign. It's act, react, impact, and this is in order to emphasize and demonstrate and try to convince citizens that if all of us we work together, we can make a difference. We can have a genuine impact on citizens' lives. So you're going to watch the Hue Manifesto, which sets the tone of our institutional campaign. Certainly it will be complemented in the near future with our communication tools, particularly as we are approaching to the Go to Vote phase, which starts in March 2014. Nevertheless, I have to say that Hue Manifesto has been one of the most successful communication products, since we have so far already more than 8 million views through Facebook and